So up until now in the Bhagavad Gita, the message has been really hopeful. We've been given this clear sense that, yeah, we can actually change. But in Chapter 7, things take a sharp turn. We start to tackle a much more difficult and, honestly, a pretty uncomfortable question.
We've heard that our mind, the one that can feel so chaotic and totally out of control, well, it's not a lost cause. It can absolutely be trained, it can be focused, and we can even learn to work with it.
We've also been told not to worry about setbacks, which is a huge relief. If we stumble, if we fall off the path, that discipline isn't just gone forever. Nope, it can always be rebuilt, piece by piece.
And maybe the most powerful message of all is that every genuine attempt we make actually matters. No sincere effort, no matter how small or insignificant it feels at the time, is ever wasted.
So when you hear all that, it leads to a really obvious question, doesn't it? If this path to real clarity and freedom actually exists, why aren't more people on it? Why do so many of us stay stuck, often in situations that we know are making us unhappy? Well, Chapter 7 kicks off with a brutally honest answer.
Now, you might think the easy answer is just ignorance, that people just don't know any better. But Krishna says, nope, that's not it. The problem isn't a lack of information. We feel the dissatisfaction. We sense that something's missing. The evidence is all around us.
So here's the real kicker. The resistance people have isn't about the message itself, it's about the method. Because seeking real answers, the kind that actually change your life, requires this fundamental shift in direction. You have to turn away from the outside world and start looking inward. And that is precisely why it's so hard. The moment we turn our attention inward, we are directly threatening the three pillars that hold up our entire ordinary life: our cozy comforts, our carefully built identity, and the powerful, almost unstoppable momentum of our habits.
This line right here, it just gets to the very heart of the human condition. We want our pain to go away, we want relief from our problems, but we don't actually want to change the thing that's causing the problems, which is usually ourselves. It's like we want the aspirin, but we don't want to change the lifestyle that's giving us the headache.
Okay, so to help us really get a handle on this resistance, Krishna gives us this amazing framework. He explains that we all operate with two very different natures.
This is such a clear and useful map for our inner world. On one side, you've got what's called the lower nature. Think of it as our default setting. It just runs on habit and impulse, and it's always looking for stuff on the outside to make it happy. Pleasure, security, validation from others. But then, we also have this higher nature. And that's the part of us that's capable of real awareness, of asking the big questions, and of seeking things that are internal, like genuine understanding and a deep sense of stability.
And what's so important here is that the Gita is incredibly compassionate about this. This isn't a moral judgment. People don't stay stuck in that lower nature because they're bad. They stay there because it's just easier. It's the path of least resistance. Habit feels familiar and predictable, and that feels comfortable, even if it's ultimately not making us happy.
All right, so let's dig into that a little deeper. Why exactly does something familiar, even if it's a familiar pain, often feel so much safer than the unknown promise of truth?
Well, the reason is pretty simple. Truth, by its very nature, is a disruptor. It doesn't show up to confirm everything you already believe or to pat you on the back. It shows up to interrupt the program you've been running.
And we're not talking about questioning small things. It goes right for the foundations of your life. It makes you question how you live every day, what you're chasing after, and the very story you tell yourself about who you are. I mean, that's basically a personal earthquake.
And here we have the great paradox of being human. We can be stuck in a pattern that causes us real, genuine pain, but we'll cling to it just because it's familiar. And that familiarity feels like a weird kind of safety. The unknown territory of real change just seems way more dangerous than the familiar misery we already know.
This is such a subtle but absolutely crucial point. Pain, by itself, is not enough to turn someone into a seeker of truth. I mean, if it was, the whole world would be full of enlightened masters, right? It's only when that suffering is met with awareness, that conscious recognition that says, hey, something has to change. That's when real inquiry can finally begin. Otherwise, pain just makes us double down on our old coping mechanisms.
Okay, so you might be wondering, if we're all so busy avoiding this inward turn, where does all our mental energy actually go? Well, Krishna points to two powerful forces, desire and its best friend, distraction.
So here's how it works. It's like a chain reaction.
First, a desire pops up and immediately yanks our attention outward, toward whatever it is we want. Then, as we get caught in this web of wanting one thing after another, our focus gets scattered all over the place. And a mind that's scattered all the time, it just loses the muscle, the capacity for deep, quiet reflection.
But get this, and this is a huge insight from the Gita. Distraction isn't just something that happens to us. It's not an accident. It's actually an active strategy. It's the mind's way of creating enough noise and busyness to avoid the profound silence of stillness. Why? Because in that stillness, uncomfortable truths have a way of showing up.
And I mean, does this sound familiar? This ancient insight has never been more relevant than it is right now. We see this deliberate avoidance of stillness playing out all around us in the 21st century.
The tools are way more sophisticated now, but the strategy is exactly the same. We consume things endlessly. We scroll through infinite feeds on our phones. We compulsively stay busy, packing our calendars until they're about to burst. And it's not because we're lazy. It's because true, honest-to-goodness stillness can feel really, really confronting.
Now, it's so important to remember this isn't the Gita wagging its finger at us. This is not a condemnation of humanity. It's what you could call compassionate realism. It's just explaining the basic mechanics of the human mind with incredible clarity and a deep sense of understanding.
So the ultimate takeaway from this part of the chapter is actually incredibly empowering. The path to wisdom isn't some kind of IQ test. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It all comes down to something much simpler, but much harder. It's about bravery. It's about the simple willingness to finally look inward.
But of course, this leads us to the next big question. If most people are caught in this outward flow of distraction, then who are the few that actually manage to turn around and look inside? What is it that triggers that shift? And why is it that for so many people, a moment of profound crisis becomes the unexpected doorway to real clarity? We're going to decode all of that in our next explainer.